Hello everybody, welcome into my Twitch stream. My name is DLP, BambiRaptor9 Twitch, and today is an unexpected Tuesday. I'm going to be doing some art streaming this afternoon. So today is going to be, there's a little bit of chatting here and there because of course. But the majority of today is going to be just watching me create some art. And the art I'm going to be creating today is in connection to my dinosaur fantasy series that I'm developing. It started with this self-published novel, Iara's Crossing, and the series is going to expand and continue on in a comic book that I'm developing called Iara's Ascendance. So you do not have to read Iara's Crossing to understand Iara's Ascendance, but it's always appreciated if you do, because this is where a lot of the world building starts, is in this novel, but it will pick up and continue on in the comics. So today I wanted to share some things with you with my comic book that I'm developing. The first issue is called See Change. Future issues will have different titles, but this is one of the covers that I've created for the comic book for the first issue. So today I'm going to be doing some experimentation with how my main character Iara is going to look when the series begins. Because when this series starts, it's going to be more of a retrospective. So she's going to be looking back on her life from when she was younger, and kind of reflecting on where her path has ended up. And so Yara's Ascendance is just that, as the title implies. It shows that she has ascended into a new role in her life. And what that is and what that entails and how she's going to look back on her past, you will find out as you read the comic book series that I'm creating as of right now. Now, I do have a script written out for the first comic, and actually for the first, so I do have a plot that I've developed for this series. However, as I've reviewed it and as I'm going over the characters and what I want for them and how they grow, and what they're trying to tell me as characters and who they are, I found out that unfortunately I find that I've neglected my dinosaur characters quite a bit the past couple of years. And that's primarily due to personal reasons, and it's also due to I've been driven to distraction through other social media that has not really benefited me in many ways. And so I find that if I just go back to my roots of being an artist and creating for myself and not for anybody else, really, I think that this is something that I'd like to do, and it's something new. So I don't know if this stream on Tuesdays is going to become a regular thing, or if I'll stream another day during the week instead of just Saturdays here on Twitch. I'm thinking of doing that. So I'm streaming during the day because this time of day it's a little bit quieter, and I feel that this time of day also for me is most conducive to getting things done, and that includes my art. So in a way, doing this stream is kind of like holding me accountable to doing the art towards my comic book, so I don't lose sight of that. And I deeply appreciate you for donating to my Ko-fi. You're welcome to do so. You're never obligated to, but I deeply appreciate it when you do, because when you do donate to my Ko-fi, you are supporting an independent artist as well as a game streamer here on Twitch. So I do both, and I'm an author and an artist, so I have twice the pain involved in creating stories. But I do find it fun that way, and I guess it appeals to my ADHD side far more than my autistic side. But I digress. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to, again, today mostly just create. I may do some chatting here and there, but for the most part, this is gonna be a chill stream. So I'm going to put on some music. The beginning music was from the YouTube audio library, by the way. So I'm going to put on some copyright-free music that you can listen to in the background. Lately, I've been getting into an artist on YouTube called Hotline Sawani, and he does like lo-fi sonic music, which is cool. So that's pretty fun. and it's no AI as far as I'm aware. So that's nice. So if you have any suggestions or recommendations, by the way, if you're ever watching my streams and you're like, hey, I think this artist is cool and they don't use AI in their music and you want to recommend them to me, feel free to do so in the chat. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to switch down to the drawing desk now and I'm going to make some characters related to my dinosaur story, Iara's Ascendance. So, in case you're not familiar with the concept of dinosaur fantasy, think of stories like Dinotopia, think of stories like Raptor Red, think of stories where the dinosaur is, in essence, a protagonist rather than an antagonist, and you have my story. In a way, it's an interesting blend of Dinotopia meets Raptor Red, in addition to some other storytelling, of course, from borrowed from Sonic series, borrowed from Disney, borrowed from other media inspiration sources that I had. Of course, there's inspiration throughout this storyline, but in essence, Iara is her own dinosaur character, and really, that's what I want to emphasize in Iara's Ascendance. That the story is about her and her growth and her development as a character, and the other characters that she meets and how they influence her to become the leader that she was always meant to be. And this story is something that is very near and dear to my heart because this dinosaur character, she's not a self insert per se. All authors, all artists, we write and do create what we know, right? But this character is, I would like to say, she represents an aspirational kind of thing. She's more of like a character that is on another level than me, obviously. Um, so anyway, I digress. I'm gonna make some art now, and I'm going to do a lot of coloring today because I really want to experiment with Iara's look. She's still going to have, in her younger years, she will still have the brown feathers, the green eyes, the ammonite scar on her face. But as Iara ages, her body and her feather colors will change. And I hinted at this during my last stream, which got cut off, um, which is unfortunate. But today, it's all art. And I changed my frame rate on Twitch in OBS Studio, so hopefully this is coming through okay. So I checked on the sound. It seems like it's good. So if you feel free to stop by the stream and check it out. Feel free to watch the VODs whenever you'd like. Sometimes I do cross posting, so I'll record this on occasion and then I will either directly through Twitch or through OBS Studio or both. And then the video I will post to YouTube. So there are times when I cross post, and I may do that today with this video, with this stream. So if I do that with the art streams, they're going to be under a playlist called Original Fiction on my YouTube channel. So my YouTube channel is BambiRaptor9. My Twitch stream is BambiRaptor9 Twitch. So you can go ahead and find me on either of those places and check out my stuff. But in the meantime, feel free to stop by the art stream and chill out with me and watch me make some cool stuff. I'm going to, again, really focus on Iara today and her character. And let me just switch down to the desk and share that with you in just a moment here. So now I'm on my desk, and this is going to be the setup for the rest of the stream today. I'm going to be putting on some nice music in a moment, but I wanted to just go ahead and talk briefly about my dinosaur character and what I'm envisioning here for her. So Iara is a character. She was established in Iara's Crossing, but just to give you an overview in case you're not familiar with the story. So Iara is a feathered dinosaur that is chosen to become a role called a warrior feather. So warrior feathers are feathered dinosaur characters that, in essence, are chosen to protect their kind of their flock or their kind in general from disaster, from death, preventable death, and from, basically their own destruction internally. So warrior feathers are like the balancing point for any flock, and every single flock of feathered dinosaurs in my storyline has at least one warrior feather leading the group. So Iara is tasked with becoming a warrior feather in Iara's Crossing. And so Iara's Crossing chronicles her growth from the time that she hatches until she's around 4 years old or so. So that journey that she takes in the story, which I'm not going to spoil completely here, but the journey that she takes in the story in the novel, again, takes up quite a bit of her lifespan. And throughout the storyline, her feather color changes. She goes from a soft, downy hatchling to a fledgling, and she starts to grow in these brownish feathers. And you can observe that with the character on the lower left of the screen right now, but you can also observe it here. Okay, so in Iara's Crossing, this is what she looks like. Okay, so she's got brown feathers on her body, she has yellow feathers underneath, yellowish to cream, and then she's got green eyes with the ammonite scar on her cheek, and she has black and white banded uh, wing feathers and tail feathers. So this is in essence what Iara's color scheme looks like in the novel, Iara's Crossing. But for Iara's Ascendance, I kind of wanted to change things up a little bit in terms of her appearance. And I'm thinking, as birds grow and as they change over the years, their feather patterns change, their color schemes do change, and they have interesting shifts in the way that they look as they get older and larger. And I wanted Iara to undergo a similar process in Iara's Ascendance. Now, this is, in essence, a conceptual color scheme that I'm developing here for the story. So for those of you who have already donated to my Ko-fi page, you actually get a chance to see this before anybody else. So this I shared with my Ko-fi donors like months ago, way before I shared it live here on Twitch. So that's the advantage of donating to that account. You don't just, so if you follow my Ko-fi, that's free. But if you donate to it, either one time or monthly, maybe I'll do monthly installments again at some point. But when you donate to it, you get behind the scenes access. So you get to see this way before I talk about it publicly. And in the future, I might do special streams for Ko-fi donors as well. We shall see with that. But anyway, so this is the concept that I have in my mind of what Iara will look like as the retrospective looking back on her life when she's younger. So in Iara's Ascendance, she actually starts out older. And I wanted to experiment a little bit with her feather crest because as you can observe too on the lower left corner of the screen, she has like blue and purple feather crest. Pink and blue and purple are the colors that I've decided to go with here, kind of like reminiscent of particular pride colors. Yellow and purple is what I'm emphasizing here. I'm not going to describe them anymore, but there we go. And then also reminiscent too of like a sunset or like twilight, like very beautiful, like orangey, yellow, purple gradient kind of color scheme is what I want to go for with her. And so as she gets older, these brown feathers of her youth will begin to fade, and then she will, gain these new colors in her feather patterns. Her wings and her tail feathers are going to remain in essence the same, but it's her head crest that changes a little bit. It's her wings and body that change in color scheme. And then I also was thinking about even maybe something like this, like an owl kind of appearance where she's got this white feather pattern on her face, and then she's got other. So I'm playing around with different color schemes here for Iara, and so that's what I wanted to do today. So in Iara's Crossing, this is the color scheme, and that's the color scheme that's on her enamel pin. That's set for that story. But for Iara's Ascendance, I kind of want to experiment a little bit and see, what I want this character to look like at the end of it, not necessarily the full end of her story because it will continue on in future issues of the comic, but I just want to play around today and see what I come up with the color combos in my mind. Because again, this has been itching in the back of my mind to fix this for some time. So previously, I have some other illustrations of Iara too, my dinosaur fantasy character here. And so this is one set color scheme that I messed with. And then here's another one. Like her head crest is definitely going to be like pink and purple. I definitely want to keep this color scheme, but I definitely want to transition away from the brownish feathers, and I want her to be more colorful as she ages. And I think that's fun. I like to, because the thing is, dinosaurs are birds, and birds are very colorful creatures. Um, most of the time, it's the females of the species are nowhere near as exciting in color scheme as the males are. And this holds true in my dinosaur world as well, my dinosaur fantasy world also. Like, the females are more muted in color generally, or they have a different color palette than the males do. So it's actually the males that are more colorful and bright than the females in my dinosaur stories. And again, it's something that I decided to stick with for this. Even though it's fantasy, there are aspects of realism that I chose to work with here with my dinosaurs. So this is again Iara, that's my dinosaur character. And she's also, in essence, in a way, kind of like the mascot of my channel. That's why it's called Bambi Raptor 9, is, after that kind of creature. So this is a future glimpse into what Iara is going to look like, potentially here. So these are the protagonists of Iara's Ascendance. Again, this is all, concept work. So this is Iara and this is Kunani. His name is changed a little bit in terms of the spelling. So this is what they look like in essence. Kunani's color scheme is also changing, and I'll get into that in a second. Um, so like as they get older, this is what I want them to look like. So something like this. Okay. So I want Iara like to have, so this is like a more advanced age. So Kunani's face color has changed, Iara's face color has changed. Like again, I'm experimenting with, Iara in particular, like what I want her to look like in the end. And this is again a concept that I illustrated some time ago for those of you who are um in donating to my Ko-fi. You got to see this before anybody else. If you didn't donate to it, well, here you go. um so is this a full spoiler alert? No, because this is all conceptual work, and this is how the story is right now. Does that mean that's the way it's going to be in the comic book? You'll see. And I, again, am in the process of reworking that. So what I want to do for the rest of this time is to, again, work with Iara specifically and change up her color scheme here. I'm no longer on Twitter, so disregard this. I'm going to probably cross that out so there's less confusion here. But yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna mess around with the artist color scheme, like future colors schemes. Those of you who are following me on Ko-fi and or donating to my account, you get a chance to vote on which of these color schemes you want to see. So I'm gonna work on this now during my stream, and then afterwards I'm gonna scan this into my computer and upload that to Ko-fi, and you can vote and determine which appearance you think you like the best, and then I'll usually go from there. So I do take your feedback into account when I create characters and when I design them. So feel free to let me know, okay, what you think about this appearance, future change, etc. in my dinosaur character. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do some coloring here to start us off, and then I'm going to maybe do some more art and talk more about my other characters here in my comic book. So again, just in case you missed it, the comic book this character that I'm creating here is featured in the comic book series that I'm developing called Iara's Ascendance, and the color scheme I'm working on is like a future image of Iara, like what she's looking like at the start of the story. So she's looking back on her youth and recollecting what happened in the years between Iara's crossing and Iara's ascendance. So let me go ahead and I'm gonna stop talking and put on some music. And I hope that you enjoy this chill stream here on Tuesday afternoon, right here on Twitch. So again, thank you all so much for stopping by the stream. Feel free to just hang out, and if you want to chat, you're welcome to do so. If you want to lurk, you're welcome to do so. And feel free to donate to my Ko-fi page or check it out. Feel free to check out my website, which is dlpauthoratist.com. And again, thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate it. Here we go. All right, I am back. Welcome back into my Twitch stream. My name is DLP Bambi After 9 Twitch, and today is just kind of art and chill. This is a future look at what my dinosaur character could potentially look like. Her name is Iara, and she is the main character in Iara's Ascendance and Iara's Crossing, which are dinosaur fantasy stories that I'm creating. So this is again Iara's Ascendance. I wanted to start the series where Iara the dinosaur is looking back on her life, and I'm not really sure on how her future self will look. So what this is just an experiment to show what her potential appearance could be like. So I have some examples here. This one B looks the most like what I envisioned initially for what Yara is going to look like. So she could potentially look something like this character here. Um, that is what B is supposed to resemble the most. And then all these others are just kind of spur of the moment, like what I was thinking as I was coloring, what color schemes I wanted to go with for her. Yara is currently a brown feather dinosaur with green eyes, but as she ages, her feather color is going to change. And then what that changes to, that's what I need help with deciding on. So this full page will be scanned and posted to my Ko-fi, so you are welcome to vote on which color scheme you like the most for an older representation of my dinosaur character, Iara. So please help me out. Help me kind of narrow down like what look you like the best. Because you as the audience, I mean, you're going to be reading the book, you're going to be reading the comic. So, what color scheme appeals to you the most? I honestly, so I do like the warmer colors for Iara to establish her as different from Kunani, and also from Tlactoc. Also to kind of distinguish her, I added some like blues and purples into her color scheme as well. A little bit more blue purple hue to her brown versus the reddish orange that Tlactoc is in Iara's Crossing and also Iara's Ascendance. But I really like, honestly, I'm honestly torn between E and F. I'm torn between these two, or maybe G. Like these three, I think are cool for Iara for like a later appearance. H, I think resembles too much Tlactoc or Bill, uh, who is another character in Iara's Ascendance. He is Kunani's best friend. So here H, like that kind of resembles that color scheme a little bit too much, and I think I personally like this one the least, even though I came up with it last. um but I don't know. D is nice, but I think that E, F, and G are my favorites. What about you? What do you think? Right? So I want you to help me decide, okay, and narrow things down possibly. So again, I'm gonna be posting this to my Ko-fi page later today, and I'm gonna leave it up for the next week or two, however long they let the polls last. So even if you're not following my Ko-fi, you'll get a chance to vote and determine based on this stream what color scheme you'd like Iara to be in the start of Iara's Ascendance and really the end of the story as well. So, spoilers, maybe. The only spoiler you get is that my main character, unlike George R. R. Martin novels, does not die. So, that's the only spoiler I'm going to give you. Um, what happens to the character is something you're going to find out in the story. Both in Iara's Crossing and Iara's Ascendance. And so there you go. Now again, I'm writing this story so that if you are new to the book, if you're new to Iara's Crossing, my dinosaur book, in case you don't know what that is, let me pull it up for you real fast. So this is the comic book. This is the mock-up of the cover for issue 1, but this might change given what I'm doing right now, which is fine. But let me go ahead and let me share this with you. So this is Iara's Crossing. This is my dinosaur fantasy novel that I published 4 years ago now, and the sequel is what I'm currently working on in the format of a book, and that is my cat. Hold on one second. Hi again. My cat is not used to me streaming in the middle of the day on a Tuesday. So that's probably why she's upset. But it's okay. Hopefully you're enjoying the stream anyway. But what I was saying was this is my dinosaur fantasy novel, Iara's Crossing. And Iara is the dinosaur that is featured on the cover, and her future appearance is going to look something different in Iara's Ascendance. So that's really what I was going for here today with the stream. I wanted to kind of experiment and see like what look she would take on in Yara's Ascendance. And again, I'm kind of torn between E and F and maybe G, like these three here. But I don't know. I mean, B was initially what I was going for with her future self, but I honestly think maybe B would grade into E. Like again, there's ways that I'm going to interpret this in the comic book myself later on. So I hope you enjoyed watching me color these in. The reason why it had the little warrior feather thing on here is because I initially offered these up on when I had Twitter many years ago now. I offered these up for adoption. So if you wanted to adopt my dinosaurs, you could do it that way. So anyway, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I'm going to switch over to the other protagonist for Yara's Ascendance, and his name is Kunani. And honestly, again, I mean, I'm really drawn towards E or F here because these characters, like Yara, future, how she looks, let me zoom in, that really distinguishes her from Kunani here. So on the bottom portion here, this is what Kunani is going to look like in Iara's Ascendance. So you see there's like a total opposite color scheme going on here. So Iara looks like this as she gets older, and then Kunani is going to look something like this. I mean, I think that this looks nice. I think these characters, it looks nice together, and that's ideally, and also this one too, right? Like the color contrast is very nice. Between these, Iara is definitely more purpley blue, reddish purple blue color scheme going versus Kunani, who is more like blue green, like the ocean, because that's really what I was going for with this character here. So, I don't know. What do you think? What do you all think? Hopefully, you like that. So, I want to talk a bit more about these other characters. I've introduced them on previous streams, I believe, and I've also shared them on my YouTube channel. Feel free to check out my YouTube channel. Again, it's Bamboo After 9 is my YouTube. But I want to talk a little bit more about the other dinosaur characters too and how they interact with each other. So, do Iara and Kunani end up with each other? This is something that I'm still working out in terms of the storyline. But suffice it to say, Kunani is a character that Iara meets, and he has his own story that is told in Iara's Ascendance. Now, I might do like a mini series. I initially wanted to do a zine with Kunani and introduce him that way. I tried doing that with Iara as a zine, and I don't know if that format works the best for my comics. I might do like something different with that. I don't know. So I'm kind of torn on how I want to approach introducing this character, whether I want to do like a mini introduction to him. Like, obviously, I'm going to focus on Iara for Iara's Ascendance. It's not Kunani's Ascendance, it's Iara's Ascendance, right? So, he's a side character here, but he does play a critical role in Iara's in the story. So, But anyway, I'm debating on how I want to approach including him initially and kind of catching you up on his backstory. But when we first meet Kunani, there is a little bit of a flashback here and there to his younger years. That's why I've illustrated these younger forms of him here in Yara's Ascendance. And so this is the issue. In the beginning, this is what he looks like. So he's got a greenish face that grades into blue. Again, very reminiscent of two things: the ocean and also Budgie parakeets, because he kind of looks like that kind of character scheme. And then as he gets older, he's going to look uh, significantly different in terms of his size is going to grow, his wings are going to change, and his hair is going to, well, his hair, his feather crest is going to become more swoopy as he gets older. He does get more scarring on his face, He does develop these characteristic knobs that are found on the older male dinosaurs in my storylines. Um, so as they age, their face gets a little bit more gnarly, I suppose, to use that surfer language here. So he does get a definite change to his appearance. His initiation scar is a single stripe down his face. This is different. Kunani's initiation scar is different than Iara's. So in Iara, her initiation scar, to show you a close up here, is an ammonite. So her initiation scar is an ammonite that's under her eye, whereas Kunani's is like a scratch on his face. And so the males and the females in my dinosaur series, they have different ways in which they are initiated or welcomed into their burgeoning flock. And Yara's story is different in terms of her initiation than Kunani's. And again, I'm going to hint at that storyline in the comics because, again, the focus is on Yara. But I'm tempted to do a spin off with this guy because I don't know. He's just too cool. This character is I'm developing him. He is like literally too cool for school. I really like him a lot. And Kunani is roughly based on young Keanu Reeves and his characters. So like Point Break and Bill and Ted, like that age range is what I'm looking at. Kind of a big age range, but that's what I'm looking at here to encapsulate that kind of energy um, in this character. So he's very stubborn. He's very go your own way, lone wolf kind of character. But at the same time, he's got this very goofy, sweet side to him that really appeals to Iara, especially in the beginning of Iara's Ascendance, because both of these characters, Kunani and Iara, are undergoing quite a bit of grief, the grieving process in the beginning of the story. So that we're introduced to. Again, a retrospective looking back on when they were younger. So yeah. So here he is surfing. So he's a surfer guy through and through. He's very much about, his home near the ocean and very much about, protecting. Again, he is also in the warrior feather role, but the way in which his flock is established is very different than the way in which Yara's is. And when these worlds collide, it's an interesting mix between his energy and his past and Yara's. And so that's really what I want to emphasize in Yara's Ascendance is how you can have found family, because in essence, in his story, Kunani becomes part of a found family basically as he grows up, and then also he connects with Iara, and in that way, there's a found family that is established there as well. So I want to really emphasize that in this story. And of course, there are queer undertones throughout, right? You could easily examine his color scheme and kind of figure out what his particular leanings are, maybe. But anyway, here's Bill. Uh, Beautiful rainbow colors for Bill here. Of course, and it's funny because this character hasn't really changed all that much. So Bill, the Archaeopteryx character, has not really changed all that much in the years that I've created him. He's always been the not necessarily sidekick, but I guess like Bill's always been like the supporting character to a larger like raptor dinosaur type character, and his Ascendance, Bill has shifted his role from being uh, Yara's buddy in Raptor, the Adventures of Raptor that I created as a kid, to being Kunani's. And so, like, they're best friends. So Bill and Kunani are best friends. Of course, it's like Bill and Ted, right? Can't have Ted without Bill. You cannot. And it's funny because I made this character named Bill all these years ago, and I'm like, well, there you go. Is that, I don't know what they call that. Karma, Kismet, I don't know, whatever. But anyway, so Kunani as a character, I mean, honestly, in terms of his style and his color scheme and everything else, I'm pretty happy with this. I think he's pretty much set. There may be some minor changes that I make to his color scheme here and there, but in essence, I mean, his color scheme is pretty much done. And he's got the beautiful, like, blues and greens and things. Um, Again, very oceanic, reminiscent here with the colors there with Kunani. So Kunani is pretty much set in terms of his appearance. Um, but yeah, so I think what I'm going to do now for the rest of the stream is I'm going to make some more, obviously, I'm going to be making some more art. because this is our stream. But I'm going to be probably focusing now on just some more concepts and connections between Iara and Kunani here. I did, again, I have a script going for my comic. And just to go back to what I'm talking about. Uh, Sorry. Apologize. There we go. Just get back to what I'm talking about with the first issue. I do have a script going for it, but again, there's some changes I want to make before I put the pen and pencil to paper and the color pencils to paper and actually put this comic book together. So there's a few things that I do want to work on. And for those of you who donate to my Ko-fi shop, you get a chance to not only help me with character design and with storyline, but you actually get to read potentially future scripts to these issues way before anybody else. So before I share this stuff on Twitch, before I share it on YouTube, before I share it anywhere else, Ko-fi folks get the chance to see this way before anybody else. And yeah, so there you go. They're definitely, given Yara's color change that I'm thinking about, is going to be a change to her appearance here in Yara's Ascendance. I don't know if the cover is going to change. I like the cover design here. There are two other cover designs that I've developed that Ko-fi members have already seen. Uh, so they get a chance to vote on what they want to see from me. And I still haven't posted that poll yet because I'm deciding on what I want to do with her looks. So Yara's Ascendance, this is the current cover scheme, but this may change. Okay, for the sea change. It may change for future reference, but this I like the way this design looks anyway, and I've used it on, I guess you could call it marketing, promotional stuff already. So, but I am gonna change the cover scheme here as well. I have the setup for this in GIMP, which is not what you think it is. It's a new image manipulation program, uh, which is like a Photoshop, Illustrator Photoshop knockoff. That's free. And anyway, what am I yapping about? All right. So I'm gonna work on the comic here for a little bit. I'm gonna start thinking of some establishing scenes between Iara and Kunani, and I've already kind of messed around with like their interactions. Again, very opposite in terms of their characters, in terms of their personalities. Iara is also stubborn, but in a different kind of way. So Iara is very much like, I gotta stick to the rules kind of character. She's very much like, I was raised in this environment and I was told to stick by these rules, so this is what I have to stick with. This is what's been established for me already. Whereas Kunani is definitely more like go with the flow. So Yara does speak out against, injustice and things. She has a very strong sense of justice as a character. Obviously, that's what makes her a good leader in her flock. But also, Yara is very much about like, yes, but there's certain rules that I still have to adhere to for my particular kind of dinosaur. So Yara is very much torn between, should I break out and do my own thing, separate from what the elders have taught me and separate from what my past has taught me, or should I just continue on this path that's been set for me by my initial flock? And then for Kunani, his situation is very different. He's very much already uh, thinking outside the box. He's already very much like, and yet he's very stubborn in his own methods. And he's not exactly, I mean, he has his sweet moments, but he's not exactly like a very sweet character to be introduced to initially. So when Iara meets Kunani, they're not rivals, but it's very similar to that. It's that antagonistic kind of connection that develops between them initially. So it's interesting. So they kind of have like the verbal and mental sparring back and forth. They kind of, again, because they're both leaders and raised to be as such. It's interesting how they connect and how they collide. Um, so Yari's Ascendance is very much a story of worlds colliding and characters' perspective shift happening, And also, again, color. The color scheme of these characters is going to change as they grow. And Iara is a character that I feel definitely needs the most work in terms of who she is and what she wants. And when she meets Kunani, what is her mindset? What is her goal? What does she want from this life? And she's still figuring things out. And I think it's important when you have characters and stories, especially heroes, to kind of think about that. Like, I personally I like stories where the hero is somebody that is still trying to make things work and figuring things out. Like, I don't like stories where the hero is like definitely 100% a do-gooder, 100% like the best character ever, and they'll always do right, and the end. I'm not that kind of storyteller, and I'm not that kind of person that reads those stories. I like rooting for the underdog. I like stories where the characters definitely stand out on their own, and I like stories where they also have like a found family situation that develops. So I, that's kind of what I want to embody in my stories and in my dinosaur character as well. And I have been reading other comic books, and I am interested in knowing more about process behind making comics and things. And I'm always learning myself as an artist and trying to figure out, okay, gauging not only what you like to see as an audience, as viewers and as readers, but what also I would like to read and see. And I'm getting back to that, to my roots of like when I was a kid, this is what I wanted, and how has that changed, and what do I want now? And it's interesting because this dinosaur story kind of parallels my own self in that way. Understand it's again not one to one. This dinosaur character is able to wield elemental magic, for example, and she's not a Mary Sue. I'm doing my best not to set her up that way, where she is fallible. There are times when the magic drains her to the point where she gets exhausted and could possibly die, and there are times when um she deals with emotional situations and pretty much PTSD type situations where this is different than like a standard protagonist story. So I wanted to kind of get into like the darker aspects of what it means to be put in this position of being a hero or being the leader that everybody looks up to. And again, like, what does that mean in terms of like, well, if that title is taken away from you, who are you really? And I think this is something we could all connect to and all relate to, right? If you don't have your title anymore, if you don't have that, like, who exactly are you anyway? And I think a lot of us, especially with diversions involved in stuff like masking and stuff, this kind of tackles that notion as well. So this story is more than just dinosaur fantasy magic. Woo, dinosaurs, are awesome and they fight with each other like dinosaurs do. And, there's not blood and guts everywhere, but there is some mild gore and violence, of course. But also, too, like, what are the connections between them? How do they get along with each other? How do they view other dinosaurs in the context of, feathered dinosaurs versus the standard dinosaur type, which do exist in my stories. Um, so, all of that is covered in Iara's Crossing, which is the dinosaur fantasy novel that preceded the comics that came before. So, if you're interested in finding out how I've established this fantasy world in my head of my dinosaur characters and how they all interact with each other and their hierarchy system and all that stuff, their social connections, please read my story. Please read Iara's Crossing. Feel free to leave me a review as well. You're never obligated to, but I would deeply appreciate if you did. So feel free to check that out. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to continue working on my comic book now. I'm just going to sketch out some scenes, some concepts, and, just think about these characters a little bit more detail, who they are and what they want and things. And I think I'm going to use one of the future illustrations that I've done just as a guide for color scheme. And yeah, because I'm in the mood to color today. So, anyway, I hope that you're enjoying the stream. It's a chill stream, it's art and chill. I hope that you like it. Also, the music I was playing was from an Echo the Dolphin fan album that's called Sound Waves. It's a tribute album to the game series. I love Echo the Dolphin, by the way. There is a character in my story that turns into a dolphin, and so there is that. He is not Echo, okay? So by the way, there are no aliens. There's no humans in my story. It's just dinosaurs. It's all dinosaurs all the time, and a few mammals here and there, but it's all dinosaurs. Because that's really the setting that I wanted to establish. And also, the area in which this is happening is along the Western Interior Seaway, if you want to be nerdy about it. So, like, when in the Cretaceous period, around 60 to 90 million years ago, um, the North American continent was completely flooded with the ocean. And from the Gulf of Mexico all the way north to Canada, there was an inland sea that existed, and it divided North America in half. And so Iara is on one half of the continent, her kind is on one half of the continent, and Kunani's kind, uh, his flocks of feathered dinosaurs and the kind in which he originated from, is on the other side. So in Iara's Ascendance, she does have to make another journey, uh, and she will meet Kunani in that process. So I wanted to kind of make some illustrations here with their interactions with each other. And again, I hope that you're enjoying the stream. I know it's different than what I usually do here on Twitch, but I hope that you're enjoying it all the same. And I hope that you enjoy the music too, that I've selected for today. And again, I might make this a regular thing. I might make my Tuesdays like chill and art days. If you want to check it out, you can. But I'm doing this because I'm not going to be streaming on Saturday. So I wanted to at least give you all something to remember me by. Something to enjoy while I'm away this weekend. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to stop yapping and I'm going to keep drawing again. So I'm going to get back to the drawing desk. And again, my name is Bamber After 9 Twitch DLP. And I hope that you enjoy the art that I'm making. This is my original dinosaur fantasy storyline. Iara is crossing Iara's Ascendance. I might call it Iara's Chronicles, which is very C.S. Lewis of me. But anyway, I'm gonna go down to the desk and I'm gonna make some art, and I'm gonna stop talking now. So I hope that you enjoy the rest of the stream. Please feel free to, if you want to use this time to body double, if you want to use this time just to listen in and check things out, you're welcome to do so. I hope that you enjoy not only the live stream here, but also the VOD. And I look forward to having you follow me on various platforms, including right here on Twitch. You're always welcome to. And thank you so much for being here if you do check this out. I really appreciate it. And you. And I appreciate your support to Ko-fi as well. So thank you so much. And I'm going to get back into drawing. See ya. All right, hello again. Uh, so welcome into the stream. In case you were just joining me, or in case you just stopped by, my name is Baby Raptor 9 Twitch DLP, and I make art in addition to playing Sonic games. The music you just heard was from Soundwaves, a tribute to Echo the Dolphin. So feel free to check that album out. You can download it for free, I believe. I think it's free. I'm not sure. I know I bought it or downloaded it a while ago. But anyway, so it's a tribute album to the different levels in that game series. This is a totally different situation and series. This is the angst that my dinosaur characters are undergoing in the beginning of Iara's Ascendance. This dinosaur comic series I'm developing. So I think that this will take place in one of the later issues when Iara actually meets Kunani. Um, so she is, like I said before I started drawing this scene or situation that I'm got cooking. um, Iara is basically undergoing grief. She has lost someone dear to her, and in this journey that she's already undergone and still continuing, she's not sure when she meets Kanani if this person, if this dinosaur, dinosaur person, is someone that she can trust, rely on, and build a future with. And it turns out that he has the same issues in terms of anxiety and losing someone close to him. So his grief situation is different than hers, but again, there is a little bit of this convergence or connection between them there that happens that I want to establish in the story. So these two characters, do they have a romance? Do they have any kind of deeper connection than just superficial friendship or maybe mentor mentee relationship or what have you? You'll find out in the storyline, and that is a possible future that Iara is considering, and that Kunani is also considering. So they're both considering this scenario here, and Iara is thinking maybe this will happen, maybe it won't. And a future version of either of these characters tells her, one step at a time, you'll see. Um, and so it's that kind of situation where she's not sure if this is something that she can rely on, and likewise, Kunani is asking the same kinds of questions where it's like both of these creature characters have dealt with forms of abandonment, forms of um, loneliness, forms of I guess you could consider it neurodivergence. It's hinted at. It's not directly stated in the storyline or in the novel as well. I think I had one of my beta readers in ER's Crossing actually tell me, they said, "Hey, your dinosaur is your character is neurodivergent, right?" And I was writing the story, and I was like, I didn't really plan for that. I did plan for a certain path that I wanted this dinosaur character to take, and I did plan for the interconnections that she had with her flock and all that, but I was not planning on that type of interpretation. So I write my stories in such a way where, yes, I mean, it is based on my personal lived experience in some ways, but in other ways, I want to try to keep these characters as open as possible, so you are welcome to interpret them however you choose. Um, but Iora and Kunani, do they have this, future together? And I was sharing the color version of a later interpretation of Iora's appearance because I'm not sure whether I wanted to color her like E or F or G. One of those three are my favorites. You can decide on your own through Ko-fi later on today, but I wasn't sure like what color scheme I want to go for her with the future self. Kunani, of course, is like the one I shared with you earlier, right? So um, he's got the older age look here that he's got in this illustration I made a while back. So yeah, so he definitely has that appearance here. So they again, will they, won't they, is implied here in this comic series. Um, and also, again, I think this is a fun way to build tension right between the characters. And again, I want to point out this is more of like they are found family, but in a way where they're not they're not they're not in any way connected family wise. They are totally, in totally different parts of the continent. They're totally different areas, right? So just keep that in mind. Yeah, they're dinosaur characters, but they have, again, totally different origins. Just to clarify that. I don't know. I don't want to make it weird, and I don't want you to make it weird. I mean, again, that's up to you to interpret the story however you want, but definitely not that. But these dinosaur characters, again, their connection that they make, um, this is something where it's tenuous in the beginning, um, and you'll see as the story progresses how it deepens and how they each change in their own way. Um, so again, like in the start of Yura's Ascendance, she is not confident in who she is, and she's also really struggling with building connection, making connection with other characters. And this is, again, largely due to her past trauma and her own issues internally that she's dealing with. Same thing with Kunani. His storyline is different than hers, but again, also dealing with his own issues. And when these two come together, initially, it's more like, oh, here's someone that's similar enough to me where I'm scared and I don't think this is going to work. And so their relationship, again, is very much like the push and pull dynamic in that sense, but in a healthy way because they both kind of challenge each other's perspectives a little bit in terms of like, well, who are you really and what do you really want? And it's more of a green flag situation between these two than a red flag, is what I want to emphasize. Now, Iara and Tlactoc, their situation in Yara's Crossing is also, it's questionable, but not in the best way. And I wrote the story that way. I wrote the characters that way. And Tlactoc in particular in Yara's Crossing, just kind of slight spoilers. He doesn't impose on Iara, but he's very much like insistent on being a part of her life, whereas she's in a totally different headspace than he is. So in Iara's Ascendance, I kind of want to take Iara's character and make her more, definitely much more independent in this storyline, and so the choice that she makes to connect with Kunani is her own making and also is her own decision all the way. So like he is very much about like it's okay if we don't choose each other in that way. We could still support each other, be there for each other, and in that way, it's a lot healthier of a connection than what Yara had with Sly Talk. So I will say that is kind of a spoiler there. Now, what happens to Sly Talk is something completely different in Yara's Ascendance than what happened in Yara's Crossing. So I'm not going to spoil too much more of that, but I will say that there is a significant change in that character and the dynamic between him and Yara and Kunani is definitely going to throw off any semblance of the initial connection here between these characters as well. So they're both dealing with their own issues. So Yara is dealing with Slytalk and his situation as well as her own internal stuff. Kunani is dealing with another situation entirely within his flock, and that does not involve a partner. It involves something else. So in that storyline, again, it's but when these two converge and these two meet, they're both grieving and dealing with their own issues internally, and so that does make it so that these characters have to take this slow. They have to take things one step at a time. And this is a huge challenge for both of them in their own ways. So for Yara, it's different because she's used to the guy dinosaur coming onto her and being very like all about her and very much like clingy, and that's the way Talk is. Spoiler alert. That's the way he is. He's very much like that kind of overbearing sort of character. Whereas Kunani is totally different. He's very much like making his own way in the world, very much about like figuring himself out versus relying on others to establish who he is. And Kunani has a very much stronger sense of who he is than Iara has a sense of who she is. And so again, this is where I wanted to focus more on this character in terms of a retrospective, where she's looking back on herself and thinking, okay, this is how I was all these years ago. This is how I am now. And I want to show her growth in the series. And so initially, this is their first meeting in a way. How they actually made is something that is established in the comic that I will share on Ko-fi. If you donate, you get to learn more about behind the scenes stuff. So there is some of that I've already kind of, I guess, leaked is how you could say it now, I guess, in terms of gamer language. But I have mentioned, in part how these two connect with each other initially. So this is the core angst struggle between these characters here throughout the series, which I will continue to build on in later streams and in later Ko-fi posts. The other thing I want to point out to you both, my brain, hello. I'm talking to these characters as if they're sitting right here. That's nice. Anyway, hello, brain. Um, they're both wearing these uh, ammonites. So they're both wearing different ammonites. So Iara's is found in a different environment than where Kunani's is found. And again, these represent not only their environments, but also how they grew up. So Yara's situation and growth is different when she finds her ammonite than when Kunani finds his. And so when Kunani finds his, it's a totally different situation. His is not found in the same way, is what I will say. So it's a totally different, again, completely different upbringing here, but similar struggles in terms of building connection with other characters, in terms of maintaining that connection over time, and in terms of trusting other characters fully. And being open and being vulnerable is hard for both of them in different ways. So, and so in that way, the ammonite can also be metaphorical, right? So it's like, coming out of your shell a little bit. And so both these characters learn how to do that in their own ways. So I hope that you've enjoyed the stream so far. I hope that you are here and doing well this week. I hope that this Tuesday is treating you kindly. If not, I hope that you find ways to feel better and make that time for you. And I hope that this time has been part of that routine. If not, that's cool. And I hope that you enjoyed what you saw and experienced here today, regardless. I'm going to pause for a few moments. I'm actually going to get a snack. I think you should too. If you haven't eaten something in a bit, maybe now's the time to do that. I'm going to get a snack. I'm going to get something to drink, some water and some things. And so I'm going to step away for a bit and then I'll come back. So I'm going to put up the be right back screen and come back. But again, my name is Baby After 9 Twitch. I make art like this on a regular basis. And today I'm streaming because I'm not going to be here on Saturday. So I hope that you enjoyed the stream for today, and I look forward to seeing you next week for more streams, maybe more art on Tuesday, but definitely on Saturday next week, I'm going to pick up with Sonic Unleashed. So I will be right back, and I hope that you enjoy the stream. Bye, everybody. Hello, I'm back. All right, so I wanted to talk a little bit more about Iara's Ascendance, which is my dinosaur fantasy comic series I'm developing, and you can watch this development live here on Twitch, or through the VODs, or on my YouTube channel, Baby After 9. So these two characters, so this is Iara, and this is Tlactoc. So Iara is on the left, or my left, and Tlactoc is on the right. And so in the beginning of Iara's Ascendance in issue 1 and Sea Change, there is a connection that's shared between these two characters, and like I mentioned before, I took a break and stepped away for a moment. That Yara and Tlactoc, their connection is built differently than the way that Yara's connection will be built with Kunani. So there is a staff here, and I want to point this out because in Yara's Ascendance, her power, her ability to wield the magic that's in the ammonite that's around her neck will continue to increase. And that's also why I wanted to the color change in her feathers, is because I want to emphasize that change and how that's impacting her appearance and also her stamina and other things. So, one of those ways in which she can defend and protect herself is through this staff. So this is a staff that has runes on it that was, in a way, gifted to her by her previous mentor, Clepsydra. If you want to know more about the relationship between Iara and Clepsydra and how those two met and how Iara traveled across the continent to meet her, then you need to read Iara's Crossing, my dinosaur fantasy novel that came before Iara's Ascendance. But I've written this comic series so that you don't need to read the novel if you don't want to. But there is critical backstory information that you can glean from the novel that will apply to the comic. So I do recommend that you do that just so that you understand the depth of these characters a little bit more than what I can present to you in a comic book. But anyway, so don't worry, I'm not going to do like a Ken Penders and have like a full page of text. No. I'm not going to do that in my stories. I never really do. It's more dialogue heavy and also illustration heavy in my comic books. But anyway, so the staff here, and I'd leave explanations and things to videos like this versus clogging up pages with that information. So if you do want to know more, you can watch these videos. Also on my YouTube channel, I have videos, entire videos of backstory about all these characters I'm talking about today. So anyway, I digress. This staff here is a key component in Yara's development because it turns out that the runes that are in this staff that were etched in there by Clepsydra's talons actually tell a story. And part of that story is established in a poem that is noted in the beginning of Iara's Crossing and continues in Iara's Ascendance. So there are, in essence, halves or parts of a poem that are established here on this staff and that are also continued on in the sections of Kunani's Ammonite. So his Ammonite, now the appearance on this has changed drastically since I first illustrated him, but because now there's six spikes on the Ammonite that he wears, and it's kind of like a ship's wheel on purpose, or should I say on porpoise? Anyway, he turns into a dolphin in the story. Just spoiler alert, I guess. Um, But Kunani here, in this early illustration that I made of him, so this ammonite does have spikes on it, and on each of the spires there are very faint runes that are inscribed by his mentor. So Kunani's mentor is Rufus, because of course it is. Now Rufus, his actual name is Selasphorus, but everybody calls him Rufus because it's easier to say. So Selasphorus is his mentor, and Clepsydra is Yara's mentor. And something does happen to Clepsydra in Yara's Crossing to where this staff goes to her. Something will happen to Selasphorus, but that's not going to be described until you read the comics. So I'm not going to talk any more about him. So Yara's something happens to her in the start of Iara's Ascendance, and she is grieving, like I said before the break, and she's holding this staff here. So this was one of the first images that came into my mind when I thought of this comic series, was this connection point, again, this grief connection that these characters share. And I really do want to emphasize that in this story, where it's a movement through the grief, and in a way, it's also breaking old cycles. Okay, old cycles are going to be broken, and new cycles and new growth is going to begin. And that's really the emphasis I want to have in my dinosaur story, Iara's Ascendance, is this breaking away of old patterns and behaviors and changing, right, for the better. And that is emphasized in the growth of these characters individually and together in a way. I won't say how they grow together. Again, even though it is found family, I'm not going to, you know. Um, is it Fast and Furious situation, or is it anyway? Anyway, um, the ocean also plays a large role in my story. The ocean is, in a sense, its own being, its own existence, right? And the creatures that live in the ocean are affected by certain changes to the environment that are happening. So I will give you a little bit of context here with that in terms of actual phenomena that happened millions of years ago. So the Western Interior Seaway was not a constant presence in North America during the Cretaceous period. There were times when it gradually receded, so it evaporated, and there were times when it flooded. And so this does play a part in Iara's Ascendance, where there are changes to this seaway that are affecting, the lives of creatures that exist within and near it. And so again, when we start off Iara's Ascendance, Iara is looking back on her time frame between Iara's Crossing and Iara's Ascendance in the first issue. And this will then continue on. So we will get a glimpse of what older Iara looks like in the very beginning of Iara's Ascendance, and like I said, at the very end as well. Now, who gets to stay by Iara's side in her journey is something that you will have to read the comics to find out. I'm not going to spoil any more of it for you. You're going to have to read it to know. But I will say that this character Iara is in it. This character Tlactoc is in it, and so too is this character Kunani, of course. He is in it as well. Kunani, by the way, is on the upper right corner of the screen in this drawing board situation I've got going here. So, Iara Kunani, these two do establish a relationship of a kind. I'm not going to tell you any more about what that is exactly. So their status, is it complicated? Not really. It's not. So their relationship, like I said, is not necessarily a bad one. I want to point that out to everybody here. Are they rivals with each other? Kind of, sort of. So it's an interesting mix of like that kind of competitive rivalry situation, and also that deeper knowing, right? That deeper kind of connection there between these two. And Iara and Tlactoc, their relationship is in essence on the rocks. Their relationship is not doing so hot, and something will happen to Tlactoc here. Okay, so something will happen to him. What happens to him, I'm not going to tell you. Okay, you've got to read the book to find out. That's forthcoming here in the years ahead. So I know that's a long wait, but I do appreciate your patience because I'm only one person doing all this stuff, telling the story, and when you support me on Ko-fi, you get a chance to actually read and understand the storyline well before anybody else. So if you really want to know what happens, that's what I recommend is you donate to my Ko-fi page at least one time, and you get 30 days worth of access to behind the scenes stuff. You get to see images like this way before anybody else. So this is what I'm debuting live here on Twitch. But folks that were on my Ko-fi supporting me, they got to see this first. So people that donate to my Ko-fi page, you get to see behind the scenes stuff. You get to read, again, parts of the script, my issues of the comics before anybody else. I mean, you get to do all kinds of fun stuff before anybody else gets a chance to see it. And that's the great part of contributing to my art, is getting to know that. So Kunani, like I said, does have a relationship already with his best friend Bill, and he does have mentorship connection with Rufus that's stronger than what Iara had with Clepsydra. I will say that. So his situation is much more tight knit in terms of his relationships that were already established when Iara meets him. Iara is on a totally different situation here. So she's dealing with something else. She is grieving. He's grieving too, like I said before, but in a different kind of way. So when these two again meet, it's like this. It's this kind of opening here. So this was in essence kind of like the establishing shot in my mind of how these characters met, and very much how their story will play out is based on this initial meeting and how they grow from this. So I want to talk a little bit more about Kunani and Iara and how this connection is happening in later streams. But I definitely want to focus more on Iara now and get into the staff situation, because one thing I will say is like I'm influenced by a lot of major media that I saw as a kid growing up in the 90s and early 2000s. Um, and one of those, of course, was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Obviously, there was no escaping that. Um, so one of my favorite characters besides Raphael was Donatello. And Donatello uh, had a bow staff as his weapon, and and I also liked Avatar: The Last Airbender. Aang had a staff, and I liked his character the most out of all of them. So I mean, having this kind of strong titular character with a staff. I mean, obviously, that to me is something that I wanted for my dinosaur character, and even I was reading like older versions of the story that I wrote when I was a kid, and like my dinosaur character somehow got hold of like a weapon like this, like a staff, and would use it, against her enemies. So this to me is just a continuation of that same old story that I've been telling myself since I was a kid, but it's kind of building on that with the energy imbued within it. So having this staff, having this, ammonite crystal, it's very much like a wizard kind of story, wizard storyline. She's growing into this strange magic power that she doesn't quite understand. And that's also kind of scary, right? So, as you develop your talents and your skills, if you're getting into something that you've never really experienced before and nobody in your life has ever really experienced that, but you do, yeah, that's scary, right? And so in this way, Iara is established as a character as well, where she again experiences certain phenomena in the environment and the world around her. She experiences things totally differently than other dinosaurs like her. And so this, in essence, in a way, makes her like a hermit or an outcast. And the hermit in the tarot also, has a staff and kind of wanders alone, right? So it's that kind of energy here. So she's very much about that, kind of the sage in the forest, that kind of energy as well. Whereas Kunani is very much different. Go with the flow. I do what I want, but then also I, kind of just wander where I will. So there's no guiding force here for him. It's just kind of he's scattered. So Kunani, his life path is very much like all over the place, whereas Iara's was very much about a singular mission, a singular drive, and then, when that fails, when you can't figure out what you want to do anymore, that completely throws everything off, right? And so for her, that's what she's experiencing in essence, and he's experiencing a totally different energy where it's like he has no guiding light except for the ammonite that's feeding him some kind of energy signal, which I won't talk more about because his energy and his situation is totally different. So I'm going to focus on Iara for today, like I have for most of the stream. And I'm going to draw a couple of versions of older Iara here. Now, I kind of did this already in a previous stream here on Twitch. I did, so I'm going to probably go with, gosh, I really don't know. This is why I want your help, folks, because I really don't know whether I want to do E or F or G. I don't know. I don't know which one of these three I want. I'm really, really, really stuck. Um, Uh, I think I'm gonna stick with E today. I'm gonna draw her like E, and then E, then E. I'm gonna draw her like E. And I'm going to have she's gonna hold a staff, and so I've already kind of drawn this previously. Um, Here we go. So I've already drawn this previously, where here she is older with the staff, but again, I want to represent her in a slightly different way now. So now I have a better idea of what she looks like. Um, and so that's how that's going to change. So I'm going to have her kind of pose here for a bit with the staff and just kind of think on what that means. Also, the staff in Iara's Ascendance does change throughout Iara's life. This will change in terms of what it's made of. So initially, it's just a giant chunk of driftwood that's been carved into, but by Clepsydra's claws. But eventually, this will take on a different appearance and a different meaning as the story progresses. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to draw a later version of Iara here, a future version of her with the staff next. So I hope that you've been enjoying this art stream today on Tuesday. Again, I don't usually stream on Tuesdays. Usually I stream on Saturdays, but because I'm not going to be here on Saturday to stream, then I figured today would be a good a day as any. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to stop talking now, and I'm going to draw Iara, and then that will be the last drawing for today. So I hope that you enjoyed this stream. I hope you enjoyed me talking about my dinosaur characters that I've created. And feel free, everybody, to check out my dinosaur comic that I'm developing here, Iara's Ascendance, through Ko-fi. And also feel free to check out my dinosaur fantasy novel, Iara's Crossing, which is available now. Whoops. Which is available now on Ko-fi as well as Lulu Press. You go to find the book through my website, which is dlpauthorartist.com, and the links to all that stuff are in the Twitch description. So feel free to check all that out, and I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to draw now. So thank you all so much for sticking around today for the live stream, or even just checking out the VOD. I deeply appreciate you, and every time that you do, you are supporting me as an independent artist, so thank you. And I will talk to you after the next drawing. Alright, hello everybody once again. So, my name is Baby Raptor 9 Twitch. I make art just like this, and I also am a Sonic gamer. Normally, I do gaming on Saturdays, but today it's a Tuesday and I want to make some art. So, this is the final piece I'm making for today here on stream. I'm going to go ahead and scan these in and share them on Ko-fi as well later today. But we've got, so this is Iara as a potential appearance and future. So here she is uh, with her, like at the height of her power as an elder, with her staff. And so her staff has little bits and pieces of something embedded in there, which I'm not going to tell you what that is yet. But here she is, she's standing here and she's invoking some kind of incantation, and she's got the ammonite around her neck as she's doing this. And here she is in this beautiful, like, almost like night sky plumage. So I went with F as her design here. So very beautiful pink and blue gradient with the yellow undertones in her underside there. And so here she is, like summoning some kind of spell or entity or what have you. And then here she is actually wielding the staff as a weapon. So she's holding it in her teeth, and then she's going to swing it around. And yeah, so this is my dinosaur fantasy character. Again, her name is Iara, and to find out how she grows from the way that she looked in Iara's Crossing to now in this appearance, you will need to check out my dinosaur fantasy series, starting with Iara's Crossing, which is out now. It's a published dinosaur fantasy novel that covers the time frame from when Iara was born up until she turns around 4 years old, which is what's shown here on the front cover of this book, what she looks like then. And then to find out how her appearance changes and how her storyline changes, please check out my comic book series that's coming up that's called Iara's Ascendance. I am working on the first issue, and that should be released here within the next year or two, depending on my personal progress. So thank you so much for being here during this stream today, this afternoon. Afternoon my time. I don't know whatever time it is for you whenever you're watching this stream. But I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you enjoyed watching me make some art today. I need these beautiful color illustrations. I colored these in. I also made the drawings here too, and I just, I put them on a single piece of paper and colored them. By the way, if you folks want me to provide like a coloring page or something like that on my Ko-fi, please let me know so I can provide this to you. Okay, because I can do that. So if you want to draw and color your own dinosaurs and print them out for free, you're welcome to do so. But anyway, yeah. So there's that, and then there's one of those interpretations of what Iara could potentially look like in the future as she narrates her past in Iara's Ascendance. So I hope that you enjoyed this stream today. I hope that you enjoyed the music today. Once again, the music was from Sound Waves, which is a tribute album to Echo the Dolphin, so feel free to check that out. And yeah, I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day today. I hope that you take care of yourselves this week and this weekend, and I will see you all next week. Maybe on Tuesday, maybe not sure yet, but I definitely will see you next Saturday. We're going to pick up where we left off with Sonic Unleashed. So, if you're here for Sonic Gaming, Saturdays are the days when that happens. Tuesdays, every once in a while, there may be a chill stream. So, I may do it not every week, but maybe every other week, depending. Okay, but today, I figured I'd do an impromptu art stream. So, I hope that you enjoyed it. And again, thank you so much for stopping by. My name is Bambi Raptor 9 Twitch, DLP. You can find me through YouTube as well under Bambi Raptor 9. That's my handle there. And I look forward to seeing you all at my next stream. Please, again, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you at the next one. Bye, everybody.